Okay, I want to show you guys a couple of things uh, that I've shown you in live demonstrations, or probably have anyway. But I want to go over a couple specific basic techniques, but a little more for indirect painting, meaning when there is a dry layer down. And a little bit of direct. So the first thing I'm going to show you is scumbling. Now, scumbling can be used to match colors up, blend things together, and shade, tone, whatever you want to call it, but just adjustments, okay? And scumbling is different from dry brushing. Dry brushing is essentially where you just let the brush, kind of stroke across the canvas, and whatever picks up. So dry brushing would be essentially something like this, where you have a brush and you get rid of a decent amount of the material off of it, but you want to kind of make a couple specific marks, right? So highlights or something, right? So I don't know if you saw that right there, but this is often good for adding a little bit of character to your painting, a little bit of color. So it's not quite the same as scumbling. Scumbling and dry brushing, like I said, are very similar, but they're a little different. So scumbling, though, is where you basically take a color and you slowly build up a kind of film that blends things together. So like if you needed to match a color but couldn't, you could blend it in that way. If you needed to just show a variance, whatever you want to do. So I'll show you right here. I'm going to take the same yellow that's already on the brush, and I'm going to just slowly, and hopefully this will work for you. I'm just going to slowly scumble this on here. Yep, you can already see that happening. So basically, I'm just turning it a little more orange for this highlight, for the highlight area, for the light area. Now I can also take another color and scumble more, so I could make some color combinations if I wanted to. So I will take a little bit of red, and I'm going to grab a little bit of alizarin crimson as well. I'm going to come over to this area, this dark area right over here, and I'm just going to put a little bit of it on there. And I've mentioned before, but you should always try to work the entire painting at once. You shouldn't try to just stay in one little happy, friendly area. So what I'm doing is I'm introducing this color in a few spots. I don't know if it's gonna work. I'm giving it a shot though. And then I'm kind of brushing it, kind of scumbling it. But now I'm going to wipe a little of that off, and I'm going to grab some blue, and now I'm going to scumble this blue on here, right directly into the stuff that I've already done. So this is actually a little bit of ultramarine blue and a little bit of Prussian blue together. So now I'm going to go, like I said, right back to where I was. And I'm just going to slowly kind of blend. I don't quite like how dark that's going so fast. I'm going to get a little off of my brush, kind of wipe it in the same spot so I can go back to that same mixture. And this way, the scumbling allows the previous layer to still show through. But like in this case, being there's two colors together, I'm also kind of mixing a new color that has some properties similar to others within the piece. And so this would be, in this case, obviously I'm going really dark, right? And I'm gonna play with some different techniques throughout this whole piece. And so some of these areas in this same demonstration are gonna get touched up. But the thing about scumbling is you can just keep going back over something. So I can go very lightly right here. I'm gonna stay away from the red for a minute. And I can just kind of, and circular brush marks are good. They help make it look a little less specific, and you don't catch so many ridges and stuff. But I can just take this and just keep putting it on. And usually you want a stiffer bristle brush for this. And so I'm gonna, and a lot of times it's good to use a brush you don't care about too much, even though it's not the worst thing that you can do to a brush. But a stiffer bristle brush is gonna handle more, endure more. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of, and I could use a bigger brush probably for this wall, but I'm gonna be lazy. And so I got that now. Now I'm gonna go back into the red to pick some of that up. But I'm gonna really push hard and start to really make it darker over here, but then I'm gonna come out with some lighter over here. And then I can really kind of control it as I go. I could put a little medium on the brush, it'll go out a little, come out a little smoother, less strokey, but also a larger brush will make less of the stroke marks. So I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna put a little bit of medium on just because I'm not too sure if I like the way it's looking. Oops. And I'm gonna grab a little more of those two colors, the mixture of those two colors. And again, I gotta make sure a decent amount of it gets off of my brush before I start going. But now I know I need it darkest up here, and this is a fresh dip into the paint, so it's probably gonna come off thicker. So I'm gonna go ahead and start where I know I want it darker to begin with. And something like that. And so on and so forth. So I'm gonna come here with it, darken this, and this is going to be temporary. I think I'm going to make this do something different here shortly, and I'm going to steal some of what's here, put it over here for balance purposes. I'm going to create this ridge right here. So I have a similar ridge here, but I kind of ignored it here. So I'm going to slowly create that by scumbling. Not super slow because I want you to be able to see it. So I don't know, it might have gone a little more abrupt, but there's that. Now, again, I'm going to come up back up here. Still got some of it on my brush. So I'm going to fade it into some other areas. And scumbling, this probably isn't the absolute best demonstration for pure scumbling, but you're going to get the point, I think, and realize that a lot of painting techniques, you can kind of use them however you want. You don't necessarily have to do it a specific way all the time. But if it looks kind of foggy, just realize that, after you scumble, you can, and probably, depending on what you're trying to do, you can and should go back to areas and touch them up a little bit. But this is a little bright, so I'm going to push that back. Anyway, and then I'm going to take what I still have on my brush, and I'm going to push back this part of the floor a little bit more. And I think I need more paint. Grab that. Come over here where I know this has to be darker. And I can just kind of slowly push that back, build it up. This red, I could push it back a little bit, right? And I can just keep going on everything until I get it all to where I want it. Pure scumbling, probably a better example here to an extent, or here, but I'm probably going to touch some of this stuff up with some more paint. But just one color scumbling, probably this these adjustments that I've been doing back here. So I can clean up that edge just simply by scumbling. I don't have to get the paint back out. By just toning it down a little bit, it makes it less noticeable than the brush stroke that was hanging out there. But now I'm gonna just grab a little bit of a dark mix that's not these, so it's going to have some alizarin crimson, some Prussian blue, and a little bit of green. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to scumble it on in a couple of my really dark areas. And I don't know if it's perfect. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time worrying about this demonstration and the colors, but I need a better shadow here. This is a little too noticeable of reflected light there. So what I want to do is I'm going to take this dark mixture and I'm going to start in the core shadow, even though I don't necessarily want to work on that. I know it has to be dark, so I can kind of pull out from it so that if my color mix isn't perfect, I can slowly work them together. And I went a little towards the blue side, and that's so that I can stick with the green feel to it. If it went too dark, it would still be a little green. I can clean up this edge, extend the shadow a little bit if I want to, change the shape of it a little bit if I want to. So, you know, scumbling's got some really cool effects. I'm going to lightly scumble right through here to see if I can give a little bit of undulation to this area. Modify it just a tiny bit. Something like that, okay? So that's essentially scumbling and building up not only layers, but layers of different colors, but also the same color. Because like I say, if you push, you can get it darker, if you need to, right? Well, I'll do a little more out here. So if I do one coat of scumbling here, or even on the side of this apple, I can keep going back. Sometimes you gotta grab more paint, sometimes you don't. I can keep going back to certain areas and make them richer and richer while leaving other ones not as dark. So that allows me to really get a good blend and a good variety from what I'm doing. So there's that. Then the other thing I want to show you is how to blend when you have scumbled, but also when you have dry layers. So one thing you can do when you have scumbling, obviously I kind of already did it, but if you want to now kind of make more of a lighter medium tone or a different medium tone, you can grab another color. In this case, I'm going to grab some white. And I'm going to kind of cheat. So instead of having to repaint this whole thing, I'm just going to lightly scumble on this light blue mix to clean up that edge. And then I can do the same thing here, where there would be a profile edge that's catching the light. I don't even have to like necessarily repaint. I just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Be some reflected light here and here. I'll clean this up later, but for now, this will work like this. I'm going to fade just a little bit into that existing color. Same here, this color is now getting a little too dirty, so I'm going to go right to that scumbled color that we already had and kind of blend to it. Then I can just keep going back and forth and just slowly painting or scumbling in things because I have a little bit of a wet layer now. So I can take some dark mix and what if I just paint it into one of these, right? So what if I just add paint, but very lightly? Control, control, control. A little harsh, a little stronger than I wanted, so I scumble it down. So I'm going to take a smaller brush with a little bit of white, a little bit of these darker colors, and just very light, oop, not like that, just very lightly control a little better. Back to the dark. And I probably should have spent a little more time on mixing it, but I'm not worried about it. Because always remember, if you screw something up, some people hate it when I say this, but paint covers paint. And so that allows me to leave that harder edge right there, but I can fade down. So paint covers paint, either after it dries or while it's still wet. For unity purposes, come back over here. Bring that edge out better. And so on and so forth. Now, here, take this, get some of the white off the higher part of the handle. I don't like that at all, so I think I'm going to leave that one alone for right now. But now, I just want to show you what basically, it's similar to oiling in, but there's a way of blending after your colors have dried with a wet surface without having to repaint. And it's really one of those like simple things that you don't always think about. We could mix up a glaze, and which is a thin layer of, or a large amount of medium with a little bit of paint. We can do that, but sometimes it's just a little easier, and you can even do this before you scumble something too. But sometimes it's just a little easier if you take a brush, in this case I wanted a clean brush, and you go ahead and basically brush it onto where you want to blend, where you want to paint, right? So you're not having to repaint the whole thing, but you can at the same time re-enter it and have it glide a little more than it normally would have. So in this case, I'm going to put some down here. And this is Galkid, so I wouldn't want to take too long of a time between layers of doing this, because the more time I let this sit on the surface, the tackier it's going to get, as most of you know by now. So I'm just gonna, and I could put it on the whole pair if I wanted, or certain areas. But there, put it in those spots. I'll put a little bit up here on the apple. This also, so actual true oiling in is what, or oiling out, sorry, is what this would be. If you have colors that dry, areas that dry and kind of feel like they sink, that's the whole point of it normally, but it's also a nice little trick for re-entering a piece without having to totally match up colors. So, so what I want to do is I'm going to take and add colors to this, and then that will allow me to kind of blend them a little more smoothly. Again, it's similar to dry, or to scumbling, but not exactly the same. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow on this brush, and a little bit of orange, I think, too. And I don't want too much, I don't need too much, but I'm going to just go through and I'm going to lightly paint right into those wet areas, allowing it to kind of blend in nicely and smoothly without anything too abrupt. I could use whatever colors I want. Obviously, I don't have to use the ones I just showed you. Something like that. Now, same on the floorboard, I'll use the same color. Oh, if you get a brush hair in a painting, this is kind of a cool thing to realize. Don't take it out with your finger. Don't like over panic about it. you know, it's a good idea to get it out. But one of the easiest ways to, you can let it dry, pull it out, but it's going to break the surface. So one of the easier things to do actually is, let me try to get it back on there. Where did it go? All right. Well, either way, we're going to pretend there's one embedded right here. Just take the brush or any brush and just take the very corner of it and you can flick the brush hair right out of there. And it makes it so much easier. And then I usually wipe them on the tray of my easel just because it's an easy way. But this, by doing it like this with the wet oil down first, it allows you to just kind of really get a nice blend and yet kind of blend some color or bring some color to the painting that you know, wouldn't be as abrupt if you just straight up grabbed the orange and tried dry brushing it. It just kind of goes in a little more smoothly. So I'm gonna try, see what happens now. I'm kind of done with it, and go back here so we can still have a little bit of light and not just be so dark, right? So anyway, just play. I mean, really, this point in the semester especially, that's what you should be trying to do. So anyway, that's basically those techniques. And, you know, again, anything kind of goes. You know, you just have to try a few different things. But I'll do a little bit more. I'm going to do just some straight up wet on wet blending over on the bottom here for a shadow line, and I'll probably try it in a couple other spots too, just to show you. But what I want to do in this case, not always, you can, but I'm going to take my dark color first. I already kind of have shown you how to do this before, but sometimes it's just a good idea to show you again. So I'm going to take that dark mix and I'm going to put some harder, firmer lines back down. And here I'm going to do it too. You'll see why eventually. And I know some of this is getting rid of the other stuff I just did, but you know, you can rewind the video. I'm not worried about the final product with this piece. So I'm just putting these down. I'm not really blending right yet. But I just want to show you how to kind of blend and clean up colors and layers and such. Do this as fast as I can. And then go back down to here. Okay, now once I have those down, now I'm going to come back with white. For the trim parts, I'm going to come back with white or a light mix of some form. And I'm going to just slowly make that dark line harder and smaller while blending up into, oh, you can't even see that. Great. So we'll ignore that part for the most part, but there was a hard dark line here, and it just kind of, well, I'll put the dark line back. Okay, so bigger, thicker, dark line right there, right? Now, I'm going to kind of take the light and I'm going to push the two together a little bit, but stop just shy of the bottom of the dark so that I leave a little thin line. And in my case, in this case, I'm kind of going multiple directions just to get a nice even fade up into from one area into the other, right? And then same here, this has gotten a little chunky, so I'm going to just slowly push that line back straight again. This is more of a wet on wet approach. I wonder if I can get away with just softening this one a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of, so this is a thing that Bob Ross might call two hairs and some air. So you just kind of sit there and you don't like grab hard. You just kind of like go over, and scumbling should be this way too. You just kind of go over the thing multiple times very lightly, and sometimes you hit the surface and sometimes you don't, and that's okay, because overall you just keep going till you get the look that you want, and then you can stop. And so there's that. I don't like this. I'm going to go through, kind of scumble it, with this white or dark mix that's got some white in it. Be aware that white often has some opaqueness to it, so it can make things foggy if you're not careful. Most whites. Here I'm going to blend this in a little bit better. Again, just keep going back over it so you can soften or keep that line as hard or soft as you need it. And here, like that. Now, like I said, it's not always dusting. Sometimes it's actual true painting. But here on this apple, I painted the dark down. Now I'm just going to grab some straight up red. I'm going to actually I'm going to put the dark down a little bit better. Put some on that stem too. Put this dark down a little darker. Just grab some pure red, a good amount of it. And then I'm going to just paint right into that dark. Not dry brushing or scumbling. I'm actually painting, because a lot of blending can be done just through repeated passes on things. So now this is a very dark red, right? But what happens if I just keep layering these lighter colors? So I'm grabbing a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange, and mostly red, so that I can come right into that dark and just keep going and going and going until I get the mixture that I want. And as always, you know, like I say, paint covers paint, but if you keep distributing things around, sometimes things won't look as bad as you thought they did. So I'm going to just slowly fade into this lighter area here. And again, I probably went a little heavy-handed, and I don't have a ton of paint on my palette, so I'm gonna hope this is good enough. If you hold the brush differently, you can get different effects to happen, and a lot of times the flatter you hold a brush, if it's loaded kind of nicely, if you hold it relatively flat, you can stay on the surface and not pull up the previous layer. So it's a really good way of you know, adding more color without it all getting too muddied. So now I'm going to kind of brush some of that light in there, go into this shadow, fade it down, and so on and so forth. And grab a little bit more red, a little bit more yellow. Again, not the best painting in the world, not trying for it to be. But I hope you get the point at least, and you know, realize that I'm not trying to make perfection, but you know, as long as you understand what I'm doing, that's all that matters. So, all right, there you go.